If you're a physician entrepreneur, it can be very difficult to find out what are the sources that are losing you money each and every month. It can be difficult juggling working versus managing the business. Here to help us out is my good friend and mentor, Bob Mangat, who helps doctors build successful 6 and 7 figure income practices. You won't want to miss this. Let's get started on this episode of Bootstrap MD. Hey guys, this is Dr. Mike Wiming with Bootstrap MD. I really got a really good treat for you guys today on this episode. I'm actually going to be interviewing one of my mentors who has been helping me and helping my practice in terms of improving their marketing and also getting involved in medical marketing, which, as you know, I've been involved in for a while. And this gentleman I'm trying to remember the first time I actually met you, Bob, but I think it was at a conference, but I had heard about you just because you were really good at seeing my ads. So I had my own practice. I was looking for advice on medical marketing, and I kept seeing you everywhere. And then lo and behold, you were at a conference. So just to give you a proper introduction, Bob Mangat is a #1 Amazon bestselling author, speaker, a serial entrepreneur, a proud husband and father. And he's had over 15 years of hands-on experiences working in helping businesses grow their business. And his particular expertise is on medical practices. So he's worked with doctors, chiropractors, healthcare professionals, you name it. And he's also won, if I believe this is correct, Bob, you won the 2 Comma Club Award, I believe twice now. Is that right? Right. Right there. And maybe for the people who don't know what the 2 Comma Club is, maybe you could explain what exactly that is.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, let me say thanks for having me, Dr. Mike. And it's an honor to be on here. And I know you got some amazing people listening to the show. And hopefully we can bring some value today for them. But yeah, the 2 Comma Club Awards is basically, it's sort of like our internet award thingy. It's one of the, coveted trophies that you kind of get when you actually build something of value. And so a sales funnel, if you guys don't know, just Google sales funnels, but it's basically a journey that a customer takes and getting them into, at the end of the day, getting them into doing something, which is paying for a service or a product or a course or something like that. And so, when you do $1 million in one of those sequences, so it could be an opt-in page, a sales page, and a thank you page, that's like one funnel. And if you do $1 million in one of those sequences, in 1 year, you get one of those plaques. And in fact, we did 2 of them. First one took us about 8 months to do. The second one took us about 2 to 3 months to do. So, and I'll tell you why that is in a little bit once we start getting rolling. But yeah, so I mean, we're proud of that, and I think there's about 70 or 80,000 users of the specific software that this company gives out, Clickfunnels, if you guys don't know it. And there's only, I believe, like 0.5% of those users that have honestly gotten these awards. So it's something that we can throw up on the wall. We don't get many awards for that you can throw up on the wall, and you feel good about it. So yeah,
that's awesome. So, Bob, as I was mentioning, I first had actually seen you speak at a anti-aging conference, and what was great about it is, there's a lot of times, people will do a talk at an anti-aging conference or any type of medical conference. It's kind of dry. We talk about important stuff, of course, different procedures and different treatments and what's the best way to provide care for the patient. But not a lot of people talk about marketing. And if they do talk about marketing, they'll talk about, creating a billboard or, getting referrals from doctors. But what was interesting about yours is when I listen to you, I go, this guy knows his stuff about online marketing, about, understanding the problems of the customer, or in this case, the patient, and then really providing the solutions to that. So, Bob, unless things have changed, I know you're not a doctor. I don't think you got your degree the last time I talked to you about a month ago. So how did you get involved in marketing? And then how did you get involved specifically working with doctors?
Yeah. So my journey has been going on. I know you said 15 years, but it's probably been about 17, 18 years that I've been
Hmm.
a marketing bug. I mean, I was always in sales, selling stuff door to door, building a position or a brand so that people can know, like, and trust what we're about to offer. It didn't really matter what we were selling, but if I knew that if people bought me and the values that I bring to the table, that it didn't matter what the contraption was, that they would end up buying it because they believed in what I stood for. And so back, I went to, like you said, I'm not a doctor, far from, I dropped out of college. I had a soccer scholarship. I dropped out of college in the first year because I had to. I had to make ends meet. And the only way that I knew how to do it is I was not a book smart guy. I could not sit there, and I was just like, I felt like I just needed to do something else. And so I would rather, for me personally, I had, couldn't afford to do it, had to help out the family, work 2 to 3 jobs. And I just, school was the thing that you just pushed aside because, it was basically life that you had to kind of get through. So, that was 17, 18 years. I started my first internet business. It was a travel company. I basically had, you see them all the time now. There's independent travel reps. And you can go to go online and you can search for it, and they'll how to become an independent travel rep, and you can get your travel number, and you can get discounts and all these things. And so what I did was I actually created a program and a system for people in the local area and community to go out and have that same experience. And I was, from back then, at least in our area, I was one of the first guys that actually built that model. I built training manuals, and we're talking 19, 20 years old.
Hmm.
Had almost about 30 independent travel reps in the local area booking travel for a local travel agency. I didn't own the travel agency. I didn't own anything else. I just basically created a relationship, and I started to build this system and program, and it was really successful. I sold it off to the agency, and then I moved on. And so that was my first kind of take into the marketing world. And I didn't really know what I was doing at that point in time. I said, there's a need, I need to fill it. And you hit it. We talked about it a little bit earlier about focusing on the customers, not the competition. And I really am. I think I'm really good at that. I get zoned in on who I'm serving versus who others are serving, if that makes sense. I could care less about who others are serving. The world is a large place, and everybody can have their piece, I believe. And I don't need the whole pie. I just need a certain sliver of it. And I think that that's where people really miss the mark, especially when they're getting into business. They feel that they need to compete with other people, and when you start to have that mentality, I feel that the service drops. I feel your pricing drops. So you start to, a bunch of things happen when you have that mentality. But if you were to go and focus on your customers directly, like I did, I could charge whatever I want to, and I create a great experience for them. So getting out of the travel business, I started to get into the real estate market, got my license, and I met my first mentor. I think very similar mentors that we had back in the day, Dan Kennedy and a bunch of those guys that were involved in that. And he says to me, he says, Bob, he says, you're not in the real estate business. And I said, what do you mean? My job is selling real estate. I have to bring people in my car. I have to show them homes. I have to do the typical work. And he says, no, you're not. He says, if you want to grow this thing, you're in the business of marketing your real estate sales business. And some people got it, some people didn't. And the people that got it, a lot of the guys that did get it, they're, running major software companies and stuff like that. But some of them didn't get it. And for me, I got it because I understood that my sole function was to just figure out how to market my real estate business. And if I could figure out how to market my real estate business, then the business would automatically come. I didn't have to work in it. I could hire people to do it. I could leverage. I could build these things. And it was such a fascinating concept for me to be able to do that. And as I started to do that, when I learned that, I was spending 100,000. I was doing the regular real estate. I jumped ahead a little bit, but I was doing the regular real estate gig, for 7 or 8 years, $100,000 in, $100,000 out, making zero money, And so when I learned this concept, within 18 months, we went from 100,000 to almost $50 million in sales, right?
Wow.
It was absolute, mind-boggling to me. And today, anytime I want to basically flick on a switch, it's a beautiful thing. Anytime I want to flick on the switch, I refine it a little bit. I can create that same process, that same systems, that same style or reverse engineering of a business that I can take it to scale. If you understand the fundamental business principles, it's not about a funnel. It's not about an ad. It's not about, the next shiny object. If you understand the fundamental business principles, anybody, whether they're a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant, they can take these exact same principles. I've proven it. I've proven it in a real estate business. I've proven it in a travel company. I've proven it in a car dealership. I've proven it in medical practices all across the country. When you learn these fundamental business principles, it changes, it changes the game for you. And so I got into, long story short, I ended up exiting out of my real estate business. I started buying, commercial real estate, and I started to get involved with medical clinics. So building medical villages, I started to see the struggles that they were facing. They couldn't market. It was a cash-based business. They didn't know how to close them. They didn't know how to sell. They didn't know how to do all that stuff. And they, rightfully so, they went to medical school. You went to medical school for, 7 or 10 years to, help patients and keep them alive, right? Which is awesome. And so I figured that if I had some stuff going on with my family members, my aunt got cancer and she went through that. And so I just said, this is a great market. I think I can really, really help. And I feel like I'm doing some good because I can help doctors become more, create more freedom in their lives, which essentially will give better care and they could help more patients. And I think I have a great hand in that today, helping, many of them do that. So that's kind of the short story. I kind of jumped around, but yeah, that's it's a little bit about what I'm talking about.
That's great. What I like about it is there's always a personal story as to why someone at least is interested or helping other doctors, because believe me, we need it. Recently, I was just looking this week, Time Magazine puts out that physician burnout is costing billions of dollars a year. And one of the reasons for burnout is just getting involved in businesses. And I know you work with a lot of doctors having their own practices. Many of them have cash-based practices, which I'm personally interested in. Where do you see, I know maybe there's I don't know, I know you work with so many different types of doctors. Where do you see where a lot of them are having problems, with their practice in terms of income? Where do you see the biggest issues that you see?
Yeah, great question. I think we have to step back a little bit. I think the good practices, the great practices, understand that there's certain fundamental foundational principles that they need to set. And a lot of the times, with so many things that are going on in the internet, I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and you have guys that, and I've been through the ups, I've been through the down. I've spent over $1 million in, direct mail, TV, radio, newspaper, internet advertising. I've generated over 150, 200,000 leads, you name it. But then you have guys that are coming online and, over a weekend, they're taking a webinar course or something like that, and they're calling themselves business growth experts, or they're, and they're sitting in their mom's bedroom and running some Facebook ads, and that's not business growth. So you got to be aware of that, right? They don't understand the foundational principles on the back, and I know I've taught hundreds of them. And the main thing is what I'm trying to get at is that business growth doesn't happen with just one ad or a sales funnel or a web page. That's not where, and people are looking for that as a Band-Aid to slap on, right? So you could have all of the leads that you want or, interest, but if your systems on the back end aren't set up properly, your staffing aren't trained right, you don't have the right person, the receptionist answering the phone calls, You don't have the right delivery mechanisms. You can't deliver worth crap. Like your service sucks, those types of things. And we don't get into business saying that we're going to create a really terrible service and we're not going to answer the phones. We're not going to create a VIP experience. We don't get into that. I like to think that everybody is good in nature, and they come out and they say, I'm going to create the best service. I'm going to create the best product. I'm going to have a great experience for my customers. And I think we all think like that. But the challenges that you face along those lines is like, what do you do? Who do you put where? What do you deliver at what point in terms of the service, right? What do you deliver? And how much can we make off of a patient? Like, how much can we take that patient who initially came in for maybe a facial? How can we get them to spend $200 initially with us, and over time, their lifetime value, get them to spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 with us? And that is the key. A lot of you guys will be running Groupon ads, and they'll come in, they'll buy a $50 thing. And we all know it's a lead generation tactic. But if you don't have your system set up on the back end, right, to increase the average lifetime value of that patient from $50 to $2,000, and you can't track that, then your business is going to struggle going forward. I know exactly how much I can expend to get a doctor. I know exactly how much my doctors can spend to get a patient, what it's worth to them, how much we can actually pay to get somebody into their office, and what it's going to cost us to do all that. Those are the metrics that I'm talking about. I didn't even talk about an ad yet, So you have to figure out those things in order for you to reverse engineer and scale.
Yeah, that just reminds me. I was talking with an OBGYN doctor, and she had hired a nurse practitioner that she's had for the last 2 years. And I go, well, how much business has hiring that nurse practitioner in? She couldn't tell me. She didn't even know if it was even covering her income.
Yeah.
And again, nothing against doctors. We're all busy. But the problem is, many of us, including myself, I never had any business training. It was only after I got involved in online business and online marketing did I really understand marketing. But I love exactly what you said. It's about marketing practice, not actually just the medical practice itself. One thing that you also I want to kind of like intro a bit is I do have a lot of doctors, and they're always worried about the competition, and you kind of made light of it. Maybe you could share some examples that you've seen with doctors where they were kind of obsessed with their competition, and what did you help them to kind of look elsewhere?
Yeah, I think that when you start looking at the competition, you forget about the people who actually pay your bills. The people that you are serving. And so if you look at the competition, let me give you an example. I share with you, my brother, this is like a recent conversation we had 2 days ago. My brother he's a police officer. He's probably going to kill me for saying this, but he's a police officer, and he's looking to leave and starting his own consulting business. Mm-hmm. And so he calls me over. He says, Bob, I know that you've been, involved in business, and he really doesn't know a whole lot about what I do, because I never push it on people. If they want to ask me for advice, then cool, I'll give it to them. So he asked me for advice, and he says to me, he says, Bob, I'm looking at starting a consulting agency. And I said, okay, well, what are you planning on doing? And he says, well, I have a meeting with this consulting agency who does this work, and I have a meeting with this person, this person, this person. He's got about 4 or 5 meetings set up. And he's basically going to go get information from people that are already in the industry. That I asked him, I said, what are their revenues? And he's like, well, I don't know. One guy's doing like $150,000 a year. The other one's doing $200,000 a year. And I said, you can't take advice from these people. Don't go there. If you want, then go to somebody that's making $2 million a year. Go to figure out and ask them how they did it. And they'll tell you something completely different than these guys are doing it. Listen, I told him, I said, I don't want to see you struggling. I want to see you create a great business. And he wouldn't have any of it. And he's like, well, no, I'm going to still take these. And I said, you can take those meetings, but don't be influenced by it. You see, industries have evolved this way, exact way that I'm telling you. You guys go to the medical clinics, conferences, and you all talk about who's doing what in terms of their marketing. And then you say, well, that looks good, and I'll do that. Or you get some pamphlets or brochures from a manufacturer, and you say, well, that looks good, I'll throw it up on the website, and hopefully it sticks, right? And that's the way every industry is like that. I've got a roofer buddy that split from his roofing company, wanted opening a roofing business. He went around, looked at all the roofing companies, said, I'm going to take a little bit of there, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, pop it together. Now he's got his marketing plan, right? And that's not how you build it. I believe that whatever somebody is doing in an industry, you look the other way and do the opposite, because it's ripe for change. So I always say, do what the 95% of the people don't do, and that they're not willing to do. You might get some slack for it, but trust me, there are patients out there, there are people out there, there's customers out there that if you actually just focused on what their needs are and what they want, they will pay you whatever money you're not, and you don't have to worry about price. I've studied over the last 15 years, telling you about buyer psychology, what makes buyers buy, and it's not what you think. I share this story if we got some time for it. I share this story many times, but I'll share it again. My dad goes out and buys a car. He buys a Mercedes car. It took him 6 months to buy the car. Okay, different buyer. I go buy a car. I go and change my brakes. I walk around the dealership. I say, leave the car up there. I'm going to buy this car. Okay, so people are different in terms of their buying behaviors and buying habits. If you focused on your competition, you would not know what those are. But because I focus on my clients, I know exactly what their behaviors are. The sales guy who first initially introduced that vehicle to my car, and it was my dad, it was the first vehicle that he saw, and I knew that that's the car that he wanted. He never looked anywhere else, but 6 months later, he bought the same vehicle. If that salesperson understood what this buying behavior was of a 65, 70-year-old man, right, he would have sold him 6 months later. But because he had the buy or die mentality, he didn't sell it, and he didn't make that money. Forgot about it.
It's so true. It's so true. We just focus on that. We want the quick win, and we're not looking at the long term. Yeah. I know our time is short, and you work with a lot of different. I know you're busy. Maybe you could share, for a doctor who's looking for help on their clinic, maybe you could share them, either a success story or what you actually done when you work with doctors. Because what I think, what you and your company does is unique, is that you really try to understand, it's not just you're going to be doing Facebook ads. You really go and you look really what's the big problems of the practice. Could you share that with us, Bob?
Yeah. I think, I learned very, very young, this is a Dan Kennedy thing too. It's like message, market, media, right? And I think if you remember those things and you'll understand this concept, most people just go straight to the media. Let me give you an example. If you're listening to this call or you're watching us on the video, if you think about the last time that you ran an ad, you've got some extra money in your bank and you pick up the phone and you call a local newspaper or radio guy. Maybe you're go online and look for a Facebook ad guy and you say, I've got like $2,000 I want to spend on it. You see, this is the wrong mentality to have. What you're doing is you're going straight to the media and you're expecting somebody else to create your message that potentially other people will see, right? So what I mean by that is that if you're going directly to the media, then without creating your message or looking at the market, right? So your message has got to match that market. So if you're going from 65 to 75-year-olds, like my dad, right? If you're trying to target people like that, your message has to match what he's feeling, his pain, his desires, his needs versus his wants. And if you can create a message direct to them, then you go back and you say, let's go to the media. Is it better that we go into a seniors magazine, or should we go and run an email campaign and try to get their list? Maybe they're not on Facebook. Maybe they're not on Twitter. Maybe we don't go that route. But when you create your message and market to match, right? When you create those two things, the media becomes a lot easier, if that makes sense, right? So you definitely want to make sure that you are creating great campaigns. And I talk about this a lot. An ad is not a campaign, okay? So if you're doing, let's say you're doing a facial campaign or whatever it may be, weight loss campaign, you have to be very, very specific, because that specific market, I'm 42 years old. I've got different needs and wants and desires and pain than a 20-year-old. So you can't send the same message out to that person. And your campaign has to be specific along that whole way through, okay? And so let me give you an example, a different example. Most people, when they're looking at running an advertisement, they'll look at media and they'll run one thing. Maybe you're doing Groupon, maybe you're doing a Facebook ad campaign. But this is the reason why people can't scale and they can't build $1 million businesses. They'll hit a ceiling and they'll stay at that ceiling every single year. They might be busy, they might be making a great income, but what you're thinking is like, I can't get to that next level. What is going on? Number one is you're trading your hours for dollars. You can only work for so many hours during the day, okay? So your income is limited to the amount of hours that you want to work. You talked about burnout. That's burnout. If you're working 80, if you want to make, $300,000 or $500,000 a year, in your mind, you have to work more, right? But how can you possibly work more? You're already working 70 or 80 hours a week. This is what the burnout is. So then you have that burnout, you have everything else that you want. You've got the cars, you got the house, you got whatever it is, but you're still feeling like crap when you get out of the office, right? So for me, I'll give you an example. We tripled the amount of revenue that we did last month, tripled. I worked a third of the less amount of time that I did the previous month. How do you do that? Right? How do you create that? It's leverage, right? So you got to find a way to leverage these things. Now, I was talking about the campaign versus an ad. If you have a house and you have one rod or one piece of pillar, one pillar. Mm-hmm. This is what most clinics are built on. They're built on one pillar. It could be referrals. So your business goes up and down based on referrals, right? Let's say people stop referring business to you. What's going to happen? It's going to crash and you've got no backup, right? If you running a Facebook ad campaign, what happens when they change their algorithm? Boom, it's going to crash.
Yeah.
If you've got a Google AdWords campaign, you're spending $5 a day and then everybody catches on. Now you're spending, $50 a day. What's going to happen? You're going to be like, man, I'm not making the same amount of money because my offers. So what I'm saying is that like a house is built on a foundation, you need to create multiple pillars. You have to have a Facebook ad campaign. You have to have a Google ad campaign. You have to have your referral strategy. You have to have your resale strategy, your upsell strategy in order for you to create a great income with the same amount of people, right? So you can increase the average value of your customer by adding a resell or upsell program, So those things is some things that you have to be aware of and you have to start to create. If you're only focusing on one, I feel for you, if you only have one thing that you are focusing on and that's your go-to thing, I feel for you because you're going to I already know this, you're already hitting the same ceiling year over year over year. And some years it'll go down, some years it'll go up, but potentially you're only going to make another $25,000 to $50,000 more every single year. You cannot have the quantum leap jumps that many of the clinics or many of the businesses do, from 100,000 to 500,000, from 500,000 to 1,500,000, 1,500,000 to 5 million. You can't have that unless you have all of your systems, your message to market match, the right media, the right campaigns, the right targeting metrics for each of those businesses. And so, a lot of good stuff there, I think.
Yeah, that was awesome. I know you got to run. And what I've done, guys, is I'm working with Bob, and we are working together in terms of helping for those who have existing practices really identify their profit leaks. And what we're offering is where you can work with Bob's team, and maybe you could tell them more about it. This consultation that we're providing.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was just talking about is creating a rock solid foundation, and those are where those profit leaks happen. So initially what we do, it doesn't cost you anything. Initially what we do, and that's not to say that it's not valuable. In fact, when you do get on a call, if you feel like it's the worst thing that you've ever done and the worst 45 minutes that you spent, I will personally donate $1,000 to a charity of your choice if you feel like it was a complete waste of your time. And I'll tell you one thing, Dr. Mike, I've been doing this for quite some time now. I've had hundreds, if not thousands of consultations. I've not had one person ask me to donate $1,000 to a charity of theirs. Because we deliver a 100% value. We don't hold anything back. It's not a sales pitch. We give you your blueprint to creating the perfect patient journey and understanding how to grow your business. And whether you want to use us to help you with that, great. If not, you can take that information, get your staff to implement it, and it will make the world of business. It'll make the world of difference in your business. And so that's what we're going to be offering you. You have a couple of people on our team that jump on a call. I take them out from everything that they're doing. We actually zone in on your business. We do 2 to 3 hours prior. That's why we're so successful, is because we don't just get you on and sell you on an ad campaign. We get you on and we really want to understand if we can actually help you, right? If we can't help you, we're going to tell you, say, hey, listen, we can't help you. I'm sorry. We don't want that relationship. We want goodwill in the community, in the industry,
That's awesome, Bob. Again, guys, this is why he's my mentor. Bob's the real deal. And if you have a practice, existing practice, and maybe you're not seeing where you'll be able to grow, we could possibly help us out. So if you're watching this on the video, there should be a link on here, but we'll give you the link where you can go to. Again, it's a free consultation, but again, it's valuable. When people say throw away free around, these are things that can help your business. I've seen it. I've seen what he does for practices, and 100%, guys, you need to take advantage of this because I don't know how long it's going to last. Bob, thanks again. I really appreciate your time. Maybe just some last words of advice for people who are listening on the call today.
Yeah, do your homework, guys. Do your homework. Just because somebody can run an ad does not mean they can help you grow your business. So don't be fooled by that. If that's all you want is you want running an ad, there's a lot of great people out there that can help you run ads and campaigns. But if you're looking for somebody and you want to take it to the next level, jump on a call with us, guys. It doesn't hurt. And like I said, I put my money where my mouth is. Not many people can do that. Get in touch with us. Get in touch with Mike. Go on the link below and fill out the form. Book in a call, and trust me, you won't be disappointed.
All right. Well, thanks again, Bob. Thanks for everybody listening on the call. And as always, guys, keep moving forward.